Okay, everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to a Fix Your Gut News and Views stream week of February 12th, 2021. I'm your host, John Brisson. So let us begin. School closures may not reduce coronavirus deaths as much as expected. School closures, the loss of public spaces, and having to work remotely due to the coronavirus pandemic have caused major disruption in people's social lives all over the world. Researchers from the City University of Hong Kong, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute suggested a reduction in fatal coronavirus cases can be achieved without the need of so much social disruption. They discussed the impacts of the closures of various types of facilities in the journal Chaos from AIP Publishing. After running thousands of simulations of the pandemic response in New York City with variations in social distancing behaviors at home, in schools, at public facilities, and at the workplace, considering differences in interactions between different age groups, the results were stunning. The researchers found school closures are not largely beneficial in preventing serious cases of COVID-19. Less surprisingly, social distancing in public places, particularly among elderly populations, is the most important. School only represents a small proportion of social contact. It's more likely that people get exposure to viruses in public facilities like restaurants and shopping malls, said Qing Ping Sheng, one of the authors. So we focus here on the severe infections and disease cases. Closing schools contributes little if the elderly citizens are not protected in public facilities and other places. Well, it's quite interesting. They ran AI models for this. But yeah, I mean, there's been multiple studies and multiple discussions that school closures actually do worse for society. Children are have less learning at home. They may be put in more abuse situations at home. Them not being away, away from home, or them, not going to a public school system and having interaction with their teachers and their fellow pupils can cause depression and anxiety and even suicides in some cases. So, I mean, this is just another study just to show that kids not being able to go to school during the coronavirus pandemic is having an impact on their health and their well-being, their mental health. Studies have shown previous to this one that schools are not epicenters for spread, so it's silly that they've kept them closed for so long, especially when there are numerous therapeutical agents for COVID-19 infections that could be used, both conventional and natural. I've coached people with the coronavirus, I bet not many people, and I've had family members and friends who have contracted it, but still, nonetheless, it's quite interesting that this is just another showing that a lot of these draconian laws, lockdowns, and the great mask debate, right? Where even there was a study that I saw on Science Daily where it wasn't, the frequency of wearing masks that's important. It's how the masks were worn, that they were N95 or N99 masks. I mean, the studies have shown that neck gaiters don't even work, right? So a lot of this is all for political gain, for power, and for show. So who's hurting in a lot of this? Well, obviously people are, with their lack of being able to work properly during the lockdown, and by no fault of their own, and low compensation coming from that, especially here in the United States, where other countries compensation during the coronavirus pandemic has been better, but it's hurting the well-being and health of children. So yeah, open the schools back up. Now, granted, what are they going to open up the schools to, right? Are they going to open up where kids in a plastic cubicle and all? And we'll get to like the cleaning products and sanitation. Actually, we'll read that next. Of over sanitizing causing problems with people with multiple chemical sensitivity, histamine intolerance, and asthma. So the kids that are going to schools, even though they're opening back up to the schools back up, well, what are they going to? They're going to having to wear masks frequently, which kids aren't going to be able to wear them correctly, or let alone they're not even going to have proper N95 or N99 masks if we're going to have the mask debate, So kids aren't going to wear them properly. That's going to end up causing problems, with mask mouth, mask mouth leading towards increased dental infections and increased periodontal disease and rashes from having to wear masks. And, the kids are going to be nuking their skin microbiome with hand sanitizers constantly, and all these chemicals being spread like Lysol and bleach being used to sanitize the classrooms. It's gonna cause some problems. So what really are they going back to? This is the quote unquote new normal. It's sad. It's truly sad. I feel bad. I have kids. If they require the coronavirus vaccine for my kids to go back to public school, well, they're going to try to use grants and stuff like that for them to go to my church's Baptist school, because it's ridiculous. I wasn't going to cover a lot of coronavirus stuff on here, but I do think it's important just to talk about it briefly. If you notice, I haven't been doing news and views breaking down COVID studies and stories really, but like the last one and like this one, I will cover them. I will make note of them. I will make note if there's any standout natural therapeutic agents. I prefer the Math Plus protocol if anybody's hospitalized with it. But yes. So those with asthma are experiencing less asthma control related to an increase in using household disinfectants, known as asthma triggers, because of COVID-19, according to a survey co-conducted by University of Illinois Chicago researchers. We become concerned with increased cleaning and disinfecting related to COVID-19 pandemic, combined with people spending more time indoors. Yeah, because a lot of your indoor air, major cities, your outdoor air isn't that great either, but most of the time your indoor air is pretty bad. With all the outgassing of all the plastics and furniture and formaldehyde, and unless you got air filters going on and you know how to clean your air properly, a lot of indoor air is toxic. Like more toxic than being outdoors, sometimes even in a polluted city. Makes most people with asthma to more environmental triggers for asthma symptoms. Elder always said that prompted our interest in studying the impact of disinfectants and asthma control among those living with asthma. Cleaning products are considered respiratory irritants that cause inflammation and bronchial hyperresponsiveness, Elder Rowie explained. An online survey conducted between May and September 2020, those with asthma answer questions about hand washing and hand sanitizer use, household disinfectant use and frequency. They were also asked 5 questions about asthma symptoms, use of rescue medications, effective asthma and daily functioning, and personal control over the past 4 weeks, with responses of 1 to 5 scale to determine participants' asthma control score, which ranges from 5 to 25%. Ranges from 5 to 25, I'm sorry, not percent. A score of 19 or less was considered an indication of uncontrolled asthma. Of the 795 respondents, the percent who reported household disinfectant use 5 or more times per week increased 138% for disinfectant wipes, 121% for disinfectant sprays, 155% for bleach and water solution, and 89% for other liquids since COVID-19 pandemic began. Researchers also observed significant associates of frequent disinfectant use since the pandemic with uncontrolled asthma. And while the researchers did not collect data on increases in healthcare providers' ER visits for asthma, a large percentage of the respondents indicate having an asthma attack, Elder Rowie said. The study indicates people with asthma could be negatively affected by increases in disinfectant use and should discuss with their healthcare provider safer alternatives for cleaning, as well as managing symptoms. Cleaning product alternatives include vinegar and water and a drop of dish detergent. So, of course, you'd want dish detergent like 7th-generation detergent. 70% alcohol or hydrogen peroxide. Elder Rowie said it is unknown whether COVID-19's impact in those with asthma, but research is being conducted around the world. Elder Rowie and his research team will continue their research, this time asking survey respondents about their symptoms and mask use. Oh, that's interesting. So mask use and if asthma went up. Okay, wow. You're doing some good work there at the University of Illinois in Chicago. This is some true research. So yes, healthy clean, you want your healthy cleaning products. Maybe go to Environmental Working Group EWG.org and try to find healthier cleaning products that you clean your house with. I talk about just in general. Bleach is sodium hypochlorite or bleach is very reactive for many people with multiple chemical sensitivity and asthma and allergies. A lot of people can't stand the smell of bleach when they have those issues. So yeah, I mean, vinegar can be harsh sometimes. Hydrogen peroxide not so harsh as a smell, but you want to wear gloves because it can harm your health of your skin microbiome, and your skin as a whole is an oxidizer. There are many cleaning sprays that you can get that don't have any scent. Um, that can be fine for asthma, that are natural. I know Seventh Generation has a free and clear one that I use. There's other ones too, but and none of them are perfect in my opinion. However, I mean, you can use baking soda and water to clean. You can use vinegar if you can stand the smell. You can use hydrogen peroxide. Um, there's many different ways things that you can use to clean, that won't be as harsh to your lungs, like ammonia or bleach. Um, so yeah, and hand sanitizer, which is ethanol. It's better to wash your hands with soap, which will work just as well as the hand sanitizer, to prevent infections. And it won't be as harsh to the microbiome on your skin or to your skin in general. Um, if you're using a natural soap. You got organic goat milk soaps, and I mean, there's many different type of organic soaps out there and natural soaps that a person can use. Um, but yeah, I mean, for someone with multiple chemical sensitivity, someone with allergies, someone with asthma, these harsh disinfecting chemicals can make it worse. It can make air quality in your house worse and more triggering. So yeah, you definitely want to try to use more natural methods of cleaning one's home, of disinfecting one's home if necessary. I don't use a lot of disinfecting. There's certain things I might disinfect, like my cat's litter box. After cleaning it, I might spray some 7th generation disinfectant spray on there. But in general, I don't disinfect a lot of things in my house, except for maybe like the cutting board. If I'm cutting raw meat, I'm going to use kind of like this alcohol delimonene organic fruit vegetable spray that I have on it, or I might use some vinegar. That makes sense. You want to disinfect that, obviously, because you don't want to cross-contaminate something with salmonella if it's chicken, or E. coli if it's beef. But you don't want to go disinfecting everything in your house, because studies have shown that you want a little bit of germs within your household to build an immunity to, right? But you don't want it to be completely filthy either. Like, you wouldn't want to be completely sterile, like someone with OCD, where they're not I'm not poking fun at someone with obsessive compulsive disorder, but I'm just saying in general, you wouldn't want your house to be completely sterile like someone with OCD. Neither would you want your house to be as filthy as like the show Hoarders, right? There's got to be a balance there. But to get that balance of cleanliness, you don't want to use harsh disinfectants. Regular caffeine consumption affects brain structure, from the University of Basel. Coffee, cola, or energy drink. Caffeine is the world's most widely consumed psychoactive substance. Yes, caffeine is a drug. Researchers from the University of Basel have now shown in a study that regular caffeine intake can change the gray matter of the brain. However, the effect appears to be temporary. No question, caffeine helps most of us to feel more alert. However, it can disrupt our sleep if consumed in the evening. Caffeine does increase cortisol and adrenaline levels, that's true. Sleep deprivation can in turn affect the gray matter of the brain, as previous studies have shown. So can regular caffeine consumption affect brain structure due to poor sleep? That's an excellent research question. A research team led by Dr. Carolyn Reichert and Professor Christian Ka-Jo-Chin of the University of Basel and UPK, the Psychiatric Hospital of the University of Basel, investigated the question in a study. The result was surprising, that caffeine consumed as part of the study did not result in poor sleep. However, the researchers observed changes in the gray matter, as reported in the Journal of Cerebral Cortex. Gray matter refers to the parts of the central nervous system made up primarily of the cell bodies of nerve cells, while white matter mainly comprises the neural pathways, the long extensions of the nerve cells. A group of 20 healthy young individuals, all whom regularly drank caffeine on a regular basis, took part in the study. They were given tablets to take over 2-day 10-day periods and were asked not to consume any other caffeine during this time. During one study period, they received tablets with caffeine and other tablets with no active ingredient, placebo. At the end of each 10-day period, the researchers examined the volumes of the subject gray matter, means brain scans. They also investigated the participants' sleep quality in the sleep laboratory by recording the electrical activity of the brain in EEG. Data comparison revealed that the participants' depth of sleep was equal regardless of whether they had taken the caffeine or placebo capsules, but they saw a significant difference in the gray matter depending on whether the subject had received caffeine or the placebo. After 10 days of placebo caffeine abstinence, the volume of gray matter was greater than following the same period of time with the caffeine capsules. The difference was particularly striking in the right medial temporal lobe, including the hippocampus, a region of the brain that's essential to memory consolidation. Our results do not necessarily mean that caffeine consumption has a negative impact on the brain, emphasized Reichart, but daily caffeine consumption evidently affects our cognitive hardware, which in itself could rise to further studies. She adds, in the past, the health effects of caffeine have been investigated primarily in patients, but there's also a need for research on healthy subjects. Although caffeine appears to reduce the volume of gray matter after just 10 days of coffee abstinence, it's significantly regenerated in test subjects. It's interesting. Changes in brain, I mean, it's quick within 10 days. It's just the brain is remodeling itself in the hippocampal area. I wonder what effects that would have on memory. Changes in brain morphology seem to be temporary, but systematic comparisons between coffee drinkers and those who consume little or no caffeine have so far been lacking, says Reichart. Hopefully they do follow-up studies. That's good research. I like good research. Green tea compound aids p53, garden of genome and tumor suppressor. An antioxidant found in green tea may increase levels of p53, a natural anti-cancer protein known as the garden of the genome, for its ability to repair DNA damage or destroy cancerous cells. Published today in the Nature Communications, a study of the direct interaction between p53 and the green tea compound epigallocatchin gallate, EGCG, points to a new target for cancer drug discovery. I've talked about EGCG and green tea consumption here on Fix Your Gut. I think for some people it can be beneficial. Green tea does contain some oxalates, so people with oxalate issues may have issues. And histamine is kind of hit or miss. Some people with histamine issues do great with green tea, others do not. EGCG also in supplemental form in doses higher than 500 milligrams a day may cause liver inflammation and liver damage over a period of time. But EGCG also works very well against many gram-negative bacteria as an antimicrobial agent like H. pylori, as well as improves mitochondrial function and the health of your mitochondria. So, ingesting green tea once in a while, which does have L-theanine to kind of balance out its caffeine effects, and people with anxiety, even though there's some people who are very, very still sensitive to green tea, which may have anxiety from green tea consumption because of the caffeine, even though it does have L-theanine in there as a balancing amino acid, it's a calming amino acid. I digress. But green tea for some can be very, very beneficial in consumption in one's health. There's a lot of studies that show that. I mean, you can even look at the Japanese and their consumption of green tea over a long period of time, of centuries consumption. It's a population, and the Japanese are considered to be quite healthy and have a strong longevity compared to other population densities of civilizations around the world. So yeah, this would make sense. And with everything, moderation is the key, and with everything, it might not necessarily be applicable to everyone. Diet is very subjective. Supplementation is very subjective. But, for some, ingestion of green tea in moderation can be very beneficial. And one of those compounds that are beneficial within green tea is EGCG. Wang, a member of the Rensselaer Center of Biotechnology and Interdisciplinary Studies, an expert in using nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy to study specific mechanisms in Alzheimer's disease and cancer, including p53, described as arguably the most important protein in human cancer. p53 has several well-known anti-cancer functions, including halting cell growth to allow for DNA repair, activating DNA repair, and initiating programmed cell death called apoptosis. If DNA damage cannot be repaired, so that's when cells die. If you have a cell where the DNA has been damaged, and that can lead to, if that DNA is able to be replicated, for other cells, it can be led to this is what cancer is. That damage can be replicated. And actually, apoptosis actually mainly occurs within the mitochondria of the cell first. The mitochondria die, and then that leads to the cell dying itself, which is programmed cell death, which is apoptosis, the killing of a damaged cell, or a cell that cannot be repaired, or a cell that's faulty. So that's interesting. One end of the protein, known as the N-terminal domain, has a flexible shape and therefore can potentially serve several functions depending on its interaction with multiple molecules. EGCG is a natural antioxidant, which means it helps to undo the near constant damage caused by using oxygen metabolism. Yep. So EGCG in the mitochondria reduce reactive oxygen species that your electron transport chain produces through just normal metabolism. And so by neutralizing that reactive oxygen species, EGCG is able to reduce mitochondrial stress, oxidative stress, and it leads to healthier mitochondria, leads to healthier cells. Found in abundance in green tea, EGCG is also packaged as an herbal supplement. Wing's team found the interaction between EGCG and P53 preserves the protein from degradation. Typically, after being produced by the body, P53 is quickly degraded when the N-terminal domain interacts with a protein called MDM2. This regular cycle of production and degradation holds P53 levels at a low constant. Both EGCG and MDM2 bind the same place on P53, the N-terminal domain, so EGCG competes with MDM2, says Wang. When EGCG binds with P53, the protein is not being degraded through MDM2, so the level of P3 will increase. The direct interaction with EGCG means there's more P53 for anti-cancer function. This is a very important interaction. So it's interesting. EGCG, green tea consumption may reduce your risk of getting cancer, or if you have cancer, EGCG may reduce cancer metastasis. The replication of cancer cells may induce cellular apoptosis of cancer cells, and may improve mitochondrial function. So it's interesting. We need more studies, of course, but it's good to know. Tuning the circadian clock, boosting rhythms may be the key to future treatments and medicines. Subconsciously, our bodies keep time for us to an ancient means, the circadian clock. A new University of California Irvine-led article reviews how a clock controls various aspects of homeostasis, how organs coordinate their functions over the course of a day. It's really complex and intricate. Our circadian rhythm is, and I think it leads credence to that we were created by God. My belief as a Christian is by God the Father, because just how intricate. Once you start studying the circadian clock and circadian rhythm within human beings and other animals, like cats, for example, do not have a circadian rhythm, but human beings do. It's just so complex. It's fascinating. What is fascinating... I didn't even read that. What's fascinating is that every cell that makes up our organs has its own clock, and thus timing is a crucial aspect of biology, says Kevin B. Kowanowski, PhD, lead author and a postdoctoral fellow in biological chemistry at the UCI School of Medicine. Are saying how daily timing is integrated with functions across organs has implications for human health. The disruption of the clock and circadian rhythms can both cause and effect of diseases from diabetes to cancer. The circadian clock generates a 24-hour rhythm that controls behavior, hormones, the immune system, and metabolism. Using human cells in mice, researchers from Palo Sasso-1 Corsi Laboratory at UCI Center of Epigenetics and Metabolism aim to uncover the physiological circuits, for example, between the brain and liver, where biological clocks achieve coherence. Their work, titled Communicating Clock-Shaped Circadian Homeostasis, was published today in Science. Circadian clocks align internal processes with external time, which enables diverse life forms to anticipate daily environmental changes, such as the light-dark cycle. External time, there's something called Zeitgebers, which are like the sun or darkness, artificial lighting, artificial lighting, things that kind of like can affect our circadian rhythm, but our internal clock, which is set by our SCN, it doesn't matter if we get output from Zeitgebers. They did studies where they locked people in caves, and they still had proper circadian rhythm even though they never saw daylight. And that, I think, has a lot to do with the SCN, the super, I probably mispronounce this, suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is within our hypothalamus. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. Which controls a lot of our circadian rhythm. So we've discovered that our circadian rhythm, we don't even need Zeitgebers to set it. It's still innately there, which is extremely interesting, and it's set by a lot of genes, including our clock genes, purr genes, cry genes. I've written a lot about this in my second book, Fix Your Mitochondria, that is coming out this year. It's pretty much already done. We're gonna do a membership section for Fix Your Gut, and it might be released to members only in read only form, maybe for as a membership gift first. But we'll see. But yes, so circadian rhythm is fascinating to me, as it should be to you. In complex organisms, clock function starts with genetically encoded molecular clock or oscillator within each cell and builds up anatomically into an organism-wide system. Circadian misalignment, often imposed in modern society, can disrupt the system and induce effects on health if prolonged. Strategies to tune our clocks and boost our rhythms have been promising in preclinical studies, which illustrates the importance of unraveling the aspect of our biology and unlocking the potential health treatments and medicines for the future, said Koronowski. Dialectical light, high-speed travel, constant food availability, and around-the-clock work life schedules, ancestor clocks were in constant harmony with the environment. However, due to these pressures of modern society, aligning our internal time with geophysical time has become a challenge in today's world. Chronic misalignment when eating and sleeping patterns conflict with the natural light-dark cycle, associated with increased risk of metabolic syndrome, true, cardiovascular disease, true, neurological conditions, true, and cancer, true. A large portion of the global workforce has atypical hours and may be particularly vulnerable. That's true. Work shift disorder is real. It's been urgent that uncover the molecular underpinnings of the relationship between the circadian clock and disease, explains Koronowski. Deciphering the means by which clocks communicate across metabolic organs has the potential to transform our understanding of metabolism and may hold therapeutic promise for innovative, non-invasive strategies to promote health. Cold sores. Discovery reveals how stress, illness, and even sunburn trigger flare-ups. So this will be herpes simplex virus 1 as the cause of cold sores. Researchers at the University of Virginia School of Medicine have shed light on what causes herpes simplex viruses to flare up, explaining how stress, illnesses, and even sunburn could trigger unwanted outbreaks. Discovery could lead to new ways to prevent cold sores and herpes-related eye disease from reoccurring, the researchers report. Herpes simplex 1 reoccurrence has been long associated with stress, fever, and sunburn, said researcher Anna R. Cliff, PhD of UVA's Department of Microbiology, Immunology, and Cancer Biology. This study shed lights on all these triggers can lead to herpes simplex-associated disease. Once you're infected with herpes simplex virus, and more half of Americans are, the virus never really goes away. Instead, it lurks inside neurons, waiting for the right moment to strike again, a process known as reactivation. Well, it lurks in, it depends on the herpes virus, herpes viridae virus. 1 through 3 will live in the cranial nerves. Varicella, for example, which is herpes, varicella zoster, which is herpes simplex 3 technically. It resides in the trigeminal nerve. And so you need to get Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, human herpes virus 6. So Epstein-Barr, it lies dormant in the B lymphocytes, the B cells. And it's human gamma herpes virus 4. So they don't all live in the nerves. Epstein-Barr doesn't. Even though it can infect, supposedly, the vagus nerve, it primarily lives in a person's B cells. But I digress. Cold sores, also known as fever blisters, are as one of the most common symptoms of herpes virus reactivation. Recurrent reactivation in the eye leads to herpes keratitis, which is left untreated can result in blindness. Excessive infection has been linked to progression of Alzheimer's disease. That is true, actually. It is my belief that herpes simplex virus 1 is the cause of Alzheimer's disease, the singular cause. It's a chronic infection of HSV in the brain, which leads to Alzheimer's disease. It leads to the opening of the blood-brain barrier. It leads to the amyloid plaque formation, within the blood-brain barrier. Not within the blood-brain barrier, sorry, within the brain. Aluminum is able to get inside the brain because the blood-brain barrier becomes more porous because of inflammation due to chronic herpes varidae virus 1 chronic infection. So aluminum deposits in the brain that forms more plaques. The brain loses its ability to properly use glucose as a source of energy, too, as well, because of inflammation, due to the herpes simplex virus chronic infection of the brain. And then you have also the gene. What's the gene with? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this. The gene with Alzheimer's disease and fat. Why am I drawing a blank on this? APOE. So you have polylipoprotein E polymorphism that leads a person to have greater risk of Alzheimer's, and I believe it's because people with APOE polymorphism, specifically APOE4, tend to not be able to process cholesterol and fat properly, which leads to a lesser blood-brain barrier in people who have those polymorphisms that have gut dysbiosis and improper diet. So there's many different ways that human herpes virus 1 can cause the condition known as Alzheimer's disease. But it is my belief, and the belief of many researchers, that it is the main singular cause of Alzheimer's disease that has been put forth in the past, I want to say 5 years or more. All right. Recurrences of HSV are typically associated with stress, illness, or sunburn, but doctors have been uncertain exactly what caused the virus to reactivate. Cliff and her collaborators found that when neurons harboring the virus were exposed to stimuli that induced neuronal hyperexcitation, the virus senses particular changes, seizes its opportunity to reactivate. Working in a model developed by the Cliff Lab using mouse neurons affected with HSV, the researchers determined that the virus hijacks an important immune response within the body. Response to prolonged periods of inflammation or stress, the immune system releases a particular cytokine, interleukin-1 beta. The cytokine is also present in epithelial cells in the skin and eye, and is released when these cells are damaged by ultraviolet light. Interesting. So sunburn now UVB producing vitamin D within the skin has been shown to, help prevent this as long as you don't become sunburned. But the vitamin D production in the skin will prevent against herpes reactivation. However, if you get sunburn, it may override that. This is an interesting study. Interleukin-1 beta increases the excitability in the affected neurons, setting the stage for HSV to flare up, the UVA researchers discovered. It's really remarkable that the viruses hijack this pathway. It's part of our body's immune response, Cliff said. It highlights how some viruses have evolved to take advantage of what would be part of an infection-fighting machinery. Scientists say more research will need to be done to fully understand the potential factors which play in human herpes simplex disease. It may vary depending on the virus strain and the type of neuron infected. It's also unknown how the virus alters neurons respond to cytokines such as interleukin-1 beta, but the new insights help doctors better understand what is happening in neurons and the immune system that could lead to ways to prevent unwanted outbreaks, researchers hope. A better understanding of what causes HSV to reactivate in response to stimulus is needed to develop novel therapeutics. Ultimately, no target the latent virus itself, making it unresponsive to stimuli such as interleukin-1 beta. I think interleukin-1 beta is a Th1 cytokine, which would make sense because it's what viruses usually trigger. Yes, it is a Th1 cytokine. So Th1 immune system, T helper cell 1 differentiation occurs in response to viral infections as a way to stop the replication cellularly. So that would make sense that it would increase a Th1 cytokine. Can strep throat make ticks worse in kids? Exposure to the bacteria that causes strep throat does not appear to make Tourette syndrome and other chronic tick disorders worse in children and teens. According to a study published in February 10, 2021, on an online issue of Neurology. However, exposure was associated with increased symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsiveness. Previous studies suggested a possible link between strep infection and tick and behavioral disorders. In this study, researchers studied group A streptococcus, which is a type of bacteria that causes strep throat, and impetigo, and various of other infections. The link between streptococcus and ticks in children is still a matter of intense debate. The study involved 715 teens with chronic tick disorders. Of those, 91 had diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. ADHD was diagnosed in 258 participants, and OCD was diagnosed in 227 participants. Researchers then followed each child an average 16 months. The children were evaluated during clinic visits every 4 months, which throat swabs and blood samples were taken to see if they're infected with strep bacteria. At the beginning of the study, 59 children tested positive for strep bacteria. During the study, 103 children had new exposure to strep bacteria. Changes in tick severity were monitored through telephone interviews, person visits, and diaries the parents kept. Of the 715 children in the study, 308 experienced a worsening of symptoms. However, researchers did not find an association between strep exposure and ticks getting worse. They also did not find an association between strep exposure and the symptoms of OCD. However, the researchers looked at the behavioral measures. They did find an association between strep exposure and an increase of about 20% in ADHD symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsiveness. Okay, so it doesn't make the ticks worse, but it is to give the children their ticks in the first place. Okay? That's something that needs to be answered. Mediterranean-style diet linked to better thinking skills later in life. People who eat a Mediterranean-style diet, particularly one rich in green leafy vegetables and low in meat, are more likely to stay mentally sharp later in life, a study shows. Sorry about that, you guys. Technical difficulties. Closely adhering to a Mediterranean diet was associated with higher scores of range of memory and thinking tests among adults in the late 70s, the research found. The study found no link, however, between Mediterranean-style diet and better brain health. Markers of healthy brain aging, such as greater gray or white matter volume or fewer white matter lesions, did not differ between those regular eating a Mediterranean diet and those who did not. These findings suggest this primarily plant-based diet may have benefits for cognitive function as we get older, researchers said. Well, it depends. Mediterranean diet contains a lot of omega-3 fatty acids and a lot of oleic acid, which is omega-9. It's not necessarily a greater plant-based diet. And finally, fetal exposure to antibiotics in mid to late pregnancy linked to childhood asthma risk. Fetal exposure to antibiotics in the mid or late pregnancy may be linked to a heightened risk of childhood asthma, suggests research published online in the Archives of Disease in Childhood. The finding was observed only among babies born vaginally, so the link may be influenced by method of delivery at birth, says the researcher. Yeah, because we've shown that children from C-section deliveries have a greater risk for childhood asthma. So if they got antibiotics in mid to late pregnancy, increases the risk. Then it's then if you have it, if the mother has antibiotics mid to late pregnancy and has a C-section, well, the risk has to increase even further. The likelihood of that, it has to be, based off of previous studies. Antibiotic use during pregnancy is increasing, and previously published studies indicated these drugs may directly affect the developing fetus. Largely, it's thought because they alter the mom's gut microbiome, which initially determines the microbiome of her infant. That's true, but it's not clear whether the timing of exposure or the method of delivery might make any difference. Well, there's multiple studies to show that C-section does. Find out more, the researchers drew on participants in the Danish National Birth Cohort, which was set up in 1996 to explore the impact of health of prenatal and early life exposures. The moms-to-be are referred to DNBC by their family doctor at the first antenatal visit at 6 to 10 weeks of pregnancy between 1996 and 2002. Of the 96,832 children born to these women, 32,651 were included in the study. Relevant health and lifestyle information about the mother's prenatal exposures and the child health was obtained by telephone and online questionnaires. Phone interviews were carried out by 16 and 30 weeks of pregnancy and once after the birth. The moms then filled online questionnaires about their children's health when they were 11 years old. Compared with the mothers who had taken antibiotics when pregnant, those who did were more likely to report asthma themselves, to have smoked during pregnancy, to be overweight or obese, or were less likely to be first-time mothers, all potentially influential factors. They were a similar age. During the monitoring period of the birth onwards, 4,238, 13% of children developed asthma. Of those, 804, 15% had mothers who took antibiotics while pregnant. In all, 5,522, 17% of children were born to mothers who had taken antibiotics while pregnant. And children whose mothers had taken antibiotics while pregnant had 14% higher odds of developing asthma. But no such association was found for antibiotics taken during the first 3 months of pregnancy. Compared to the children whose mothers hadn't taken antibiotics, those whose mothers did in mid to late pregnancy, 4 to 9 months, had 17% higher odds of developing asthma. But there are association between fetal exposure to antibiotics and childhood asthma observed only in children born vaginally rather than after cesarean section, with the absolute difference just over 2%. In children born vaginally, the odds of more serious childhood asthma required treatment in the preceding year were 34% higher than they were for children born vaginally with mothers who hadn't taken antibiotics while pregnant. Wow. This is an observational study and such can't establish cause, nor did the researchers factor in early life antibiotics or breastfeeding, but both which might have been influential. But they're right, our results are in keeping with hypothesis that effects of antibiotics impact the maternally derived microbiome in vaginally born children. This may increase the odds of childhood asthma. And they conclude the profligate use of antibiotics in pregnancy should be balanced against the increasing evidence on adverse long-term health outcomes in the offspring, as well as the concerns requiring antimicrobial resistance. That is so true. All right, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this stream and found it beneficial. Take care.